RAMAPHOSA says. And lastly, World Humanoid Robots Games open in Beijing. But first, we'll take a short break. When we return, the show begins properly.
Number 2. Advanced neurotechnology beyond BCIs. Brain-computer interfaces grabbed headlines when Neuralink implanted its first chip in 2024. But neurotechnology is much broader. Researchers are testing non-invasive brain stimulation to treat depression and PTSD, while companies like Kernel are developing helmets that can monitor brain activity with unprecedented detail. Clinical trials are exploring personalized brain therapies for epilepsy and Alzheimer's. In 2023, the U.S. NIH launched its Brain Initiative 2.0, investing billions in advanced neurotech. By 2026, these innovations could expand from medical use into wellness and cognitive enhancement.
Welcome back. If you're still with us, this is Idea Morning Digest on Idea Television. First, we move on to our story. First story for today. Newly sworn-in Inspector General of Police Tuju Disu yesterday inaugurated a committee on the establishment of state police. As part of ongoing discussions on policing reforms, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu had last Wednesday during the breaking of fast with senators at the presidential villa Abuja urged the leadership of the 10th Senate to initiate constitutional amendments to provide for the establishment of state police. The current centralized structure required constitutional review to accommodate the proposed reforms. Speaking during the inauguration, Disu said the committee's task was to examine the concept of state policing as part of efforts to strengthen Nigeria's internal security architecture and improve community-based policing. He said the committee would review existing policing models within and outside Nigeria, assess community security needs, propose an operational framework for state police structures, and address issues of recruitment, training, standards, funding, accountability, and oversight. Also, a retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Ali Amodu, described the Inspector General of Police's decision to set up a special committee on state policing as a right step in the right direction. Amodu further stated that the committee would provide professional input and advice to the presidency on the proposed decentralization of the Nigeria Police Force. Well, this is an important development for us in Nigeria, that we've seen the new Inspector General of Police swing into action and not only talk the talk but also walk the talk by instituting a committee. But many Nigerians have seen many committee come and go and without any output or without any intervention being put in place. But we're hoping and betting that this is going to be different. The president also has mentioned on Wednesday during his breakfast, during the breaking of fast at the State House with some legislators, senior legislators, that they need to do more for the constitutional amendments, because it would require the two houses of the National Assembly, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, to also put their hands together to change the constitution or to amend it as it is rightly said, so that it can allow for the provision of state policing in the country. And from another stakeholder who is very important, which is the policing sector, the architecture in Nigeria, they're also putting up this committee to look at frameworks, to look at also other international partners and other countries who have established state policing or even community policing. How does it work? What are the parameters that have been put in place? What are the chain of commands between state and federal agencies? So all of these are things that needs to be looked into holistically before we bring in state policing into a Nigerian policing system. And Nigerians have clamored for it. President Tinubu has also mentioned that he is interested in decentralizing the policing system in Nigeria, because we understand that our policing system is congested. We have a system that is further straining due to the multiplicity of security challenges that we're facing in the country. And we understand, Mary, that different stakeholders need to come on board for us to achieve state policing in Nigeria. The governors have also given their consent. This is not the first time they've spoken about it. The Executive Council, they've spoken extensively about it. They've shared their interest in it as security chief security officers of their own states, they do have responsibility to curb the security challenges. We've seen that some security issues in northern parts of Nigeria are different from the southern part of Nigeria, or even intertwined when we see things like terrorism, like kidnapping, which is rampant in other parts of the country. But when we go to the northeast, there's another issue of insurgency. When we go to the southwest, we see the issue of kidnapping and other forms of ritual violence that we're seeing and killing. So there's a multiplicity of security challenges, and governors must be also brought to speed with the reforms that needs to be made. But concerns about the state policing in Nigeria has been heavily relied on the issue of chain of command. For instance, if you have a state governor who has decided to go rogue, and these people are going to be armed, they're going to listen from instructions based on the structure that is established in other countries. They take command only from the governor, not from other other security agents outside their own architecture. But we're looking at how can we make it interesting, how can we make it better, how can we make it responsive for the people and for the security challenges that we're facing in the country. So I believe all hands.
Going through this news is actually an exciting one that right now we're not just looking at only the coming fourth election, but we're also focusing our attention on insecurity and how to have plans to tackle it. And I like the fact that state policing is coming at this point where things are actually not looking good, and the government have brought it down to tackle insecurity in the country, because we have a lot of issues going on, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, especially that. You see, speaking in the inauguration, he said that the task is to examine the concept of state policing as part of effort to strengthen Nigeria's internal security architecture, and that is a very, very nice one. I like the fact that we are not just bringing people into office, but right now we're seeing the walk-ins that they are doing, and that is what Nigeria has been calling for. It's not only to be in the office, but you should also walk the walk-ins, like you said. And this is the government actually trying to put work into it, and I believe as time goes on that this would actually be put in place and would have confidence once more in our security system.
Indeed, we need to have confidence in our security system, because that's the only way Nigerian can move forward peacefully and develop our own economic progress for the nation. Moving on to our next story. Now to South Africa. The country's president, Cyril Ramaphosa, said on Wednesday that the escalating conflict in the Middle East was already, or is already, putting strain on Africa continent's supply chains and causing higher energy prices. Ramaphosa made the comments at an African Energy Conference in Cape Town, which is taking place at a time of extreme volatility in global energy markets. Oil and gas prices have surged following Israeli and U.S. strikes on Iran and retaliation by Tehran that forced shutdowns of oil and gas facilities across the region and disrupted shipping in the crucial Strait of Hormuz. In his remark at the African Energy in Durban conference, Ramaphosa said that Africa is already experiencing the impact of the escalating conflict in the Middle East, with the strain on supply chains and higher energy prices. In the last few years, Africa's supply chain has suffered direct and indirect impact from crises such as the Russia-Ukraine war, COVID-19 pandemic, Trump's trade tariffs, and dwindling industrial output on the continent.
It's a huge one there. Indeed,
we understand that when the war broke out in last weekend, during a time of religious importance for the entire Middle East, we saw the United States, in collaboration with the Israeli Defense Force, launch an attack on the state of Iran, and Iran has also been retaliating, targeting most of the Arab countries who host U.S. bases such as Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel itself. Iraq has also. All of these countries have been experienced targets from Iranian ballistic missiles and also drones attacks targeting oil facilities, U.S. assets in the region, including bases, military bases, and also economic facilities that are important for America's economic activity in the region. So what has ensued out of this is that Africa is always at the receiving end of all these geopolitical tensions or crises that has happened in the world. And we've always said time and again that we must be able to shield ourselves. We can't completely be immune because the entire world is global. We live in a globalized world and we are interconnected. So we cannot be completely immune to challenges that happen in other countries or crises. Remember when the Russian-Ukraine war started and the wheat production that is usually sold to the African continent, countries like Kenya and some other eastern, southern African countries that usually benefit from the wheat that comes from even Egypt, the wheat that comes from Ukraine and Russia. When we saw that was completely shut down because of the war that happened, it affected the countries across those regions. And we continue to see, even in Nigeria right now, the price of oil has skyrocketed because for the pump price, it's about 890 naira or something right now. So we're seeing that we're not completely immune to all of these challenges, and the entire continent of Africa is not immune. While we're making more because our crude is being sold for more than $80 per barrel right now, while the benchmark that the Federal Executive Council had established for the provision for the budget for the year is around 60 something, I think 63 to 65 dollar per barrel. That was the benchmark that was being used to model our own economic activity for the year. But we see now that we are selling above these. So what is Nigeria going to be using this excess money for? There was a time where we had excess crude accounts, where I think that was during the time of Okonjo-Iweala when she was Minister of Finance in the country. We had excess amount. Also during the era of Jonathan, the excess crude accounts paved the way for us to have access to deposit our money that we're making from the excess crude. If we budgeted for $65 per barrel to be sold and we're selling for more than that, so the excess goes into a crude account, excess crude account that actually is used when there is necessity for it. But we're seeing that the strain on African continent is more now because of our trade with the UAE, with Saudi Arabia. More than $20 billion trade with the UAE alone comes from the continent, and all of that is completely being stopped. It was here yesterday that we reported that a shipping company has actually halted the traffic of goods between African continent and the UAE. So we're seeing this multifaceted security challenges in the Middle East. It's expanding, it's widening, but Africa must be able to save ourselves a shock that is not foreseen, because it was foreseen. The issue of the security challenges that was going to happen, we saw it. We saw the deployment of America's military might into the entire region. We saw the aircraft carriers coming in from the Mediterranean Sea, coming in from the Indian Ocean, and the deployment of American forces all across the region, which are now being targeted by Iran. This was going to cause issue for African countries. But what can we do? That is where the issue of industrialization comes into play. If we do not have industries like the Dangote refinery in Nigeria, you can imagine what it's going to be like. Perhaps we're going to be buying petrol for 1,500 naira per liter. And when other elements in the Nigerian petroleum industry were antagonizing the petroleum refinery that Dangote was establishing at the time, I was the opinion that you people are sabotaging the country, because at the end of the day, we need to understand ourselves that we're not living in isolation. When international crises happen, we need to be able to defend ourselves. We want to be able to fall back on something. If we're an industrialized nation, if we have the African Free Trade Agreement work as it should be, then we'll have trade amongst ourselves in Africa. We're able to transport our goods freely and trade amongst each other and boost our own economic development. But our trade is heavily focused on international shipping, on international partners, and when there are crises all around the world, we feel it more than we should feel. It's not like Americans aren't feeling the issue, but America is self-sustaining when it comes to energy production in their own continent. They're on another ocean of the world, creating crisis and chaos in another part of the world that the entire world has to pay the price for. So you can imagine that is when conversation about industrialization for Nigeria must be at the forefront of our economic transformation.
Like you said, industrialization is very, very important. I used to say that you don't run away from home where you're supposed to build. Nigeria are always backing on, or they always enjoy exports than import. They enjoy imported goods than exported. And like you rightly said, if we don't have enough factories here, if we don't have home-built factories that we can fall back to, these things come to affect us more than it would affect them, although they are already being affected. And somebody will say, it's happening over there, so it's none of our business. It's your business, because it's going to affect our development here, it's going to affect our partnership here, it's going to affect a lot of things, and we'll see goods going on the high side. And we'll be like, but we're not in that country. You're not in that country, but you're using their product from that country. So if that country is not at peace, if that country is affected, we are going to be affected greatly. That was what I was explaining to somebody yesterday. I said, the person said, I don't know why Nigeria are concerning themselves with what is happening in Iran, what's happening in Israel, what's happening in Dubai and the rest of it. I said, we need to be concerned, because these are the people we do business with. These are the people we have things to do with, especially here in this country when it comes to exportation. So right now, we're supposed to be very, very concerned, because if you look back at our own structure, you can see that we're still trying to balance up. You can see we're still trying to build. We are always still trying to build. What I'm saying is that Nigeria should come to a point where we know that we can believe in ourselves. Those things we're getting out there, we can build within us here. We can grow. We can build within us here. We can grow ourselves more, and so that we can have something to fall back to at the end of the day. So these things will not have a very strong hold on us, because right now a lot of things is going to have a strong hold of us at the end of the day. We start running here and there trying to solve. If you don't start looking for solution at the earlier stage, is it when things have gone is it when things have escalated to the point where you cannot
exactly, and I believe because when we had the pandemic, the global pandemic in was it 2020 2021 period, and we saw the entire global economy affected because the supply chain, China is the manufacturing city of the world right now, the manufacturing state of the world, because many countries trade with China, and we saw that even things, necessary materials such as medical consumables, were deprived of being exported, were banned from being exported to other countries because they needed it more in their own country at the time. So countries like China, countries like Germany, I beg your pardon, countries like Nigeria, even countries in Southern and in Northern America faced all of these challenges during that time. And we saw how the global body, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, African Union decided to talk about, we need to re-strategize our approach, we need to look at that point. So we had time to prepare. This is not an issue that we say, okay, it's an industry is not something you can build in 1 year. We understand, but this has been, let's say, 6 years or 5 years down the line. What have we achieved? So when we have these issues that feels like it's a shock and awe for our governments, and then they come around, we come up as though we are being taken unaware, taken aback by what has actually happened. When we had the issue of Ebola in this country, we talked about not having enough ventilators, not having enough isolation centers in the country. But when the pandemic came, COVID-19 pandemic came, all of the progress that were made during the Ebola period, we couldn't find all of that. We had to start over from the scratch again. So we need to have a mindset that is focused on the future, that is focused on issues that are important. In the next 5 years, what's the world going to be facing? In the next 10 years, what's the world going to look like? And how can we be able, exactly, and how can we be able to ensure that Nigerians, our citizens, will benefit, are safe, are not going to be affected by the changes that might happen? Look at the global tariffs. Now the United States is saying it's going to increase the tariff to 15%. Imagine Nigeria facing 15% tariff, higher than what we've ever faced in previous administrations. So those are issues that we need to be looking at. I know that the economic reform is going to be painful. It's going to require more than just a few words and backing of investors into the country. And I'm very happy that even Dangote said it's going to go into other industries such as the steel, such as ports facility, and also energy production, electricity in the country, because that's the only way we can be able to boost our production capacity as a nation. Without that, we are not able to do something. Dangote had to build a specific port for the importation of all the machineries and the tools he needed to build the Dangote refinery, because Nigeria's port infrastructure could not accept it. If they take it, maybe just going to destroy the entire port infrastructure that we have. We're going to then maybe focus on other port or Port Harcourt or some other port infrastructures or sites that we have in the country. So you can imagine a private sector having to build its own port just to able to ship necessary things to build such a gigantic facility in Nigeria. So imagine if we want to build 10 of that, if we do not have this, that means we can't even do it in the first place, because we do not have all it needs. There was a time Dangote was saying that they needed to leave the crane to lift one of the, I think it was one of the silos that they use for the refined, the technical people can help us with that, the refined commodity at the refinery. They needed a crane to lift it, and the crane, there was only one crane that could do it in the world, and it was in another country, working, I think it was in India also, working for like how many months time. So they needed to build another one or do something or wait. So those are the issues that we need to look at. That if we can't even have a port to bring in what's necessary, or have a crane that can lift off to important things, then what are we talking about? We talked about road connectivity, internet. A lot has to be done to ensure that when crises happen in the world, Nigerians can at least to fall back on and say that we are at least saved from the adverse effect of that.
That's why I'm saying that we should go beyond headlines, we should go beyond the stories, we should go beyond what is written and start the practical aspect of it. Let's start seeing all those things we are putting on the headlines or putting on stories. We're always saying we are going to construct this and that and this and that. Let's see the practical aspect of it so that Nigerians will have hope in the country. Running away from home do not actually save you from anything, because home is home. You're definitely going to come back. Just like people over there that are struggling to come back home. And someone is like, if I just get a flight now, I just go back to Nigeria. What took you there in the first place is because you found the country very attractive. You found the country a place of opportunity. If Nigerians start seeing that in Nigerians, then we'll start building. And everybody would put hands together and they'll make Nigeria a better place to stay.
Indeed, make Nigeria a better place to stay. Well, that requires more than just words. Moving on to a last story today on what I was going to say what's trending on the headlines. Well, it seems that's my most